Welcome to African American History, Lesson 14. In this lesson we will describe the methods by which Africans resisted their enslavement and being treated as commodities, both individually and collectively during the Middle Passage. We will also look at the features of slave ship diagrams created during the slave trade era. Finally, we will explain how Africans' resistance on slave ships and slave ship diagrams inspired abolitionists and black artists during the era of slavery and after.
Aboard slave ships, African captives resisted the trauma of enslavement by staging hunger strikes, attempting to jump overboard and overcoming linguistic differences to form revolts. However, this resistance made the slave trade more expensive and more dangerous, and it led to changes in the design of slave ships such as the construction of barricades and inclusion of nets and guns. In 1839, more than 30 years after the abolition of the slave trade, a Mende captive from Sierra Leone named Sympathy led a group of enslaved Africans in one of the most famous revolts aboard a slave ship. During the revolt, the enslaved Africans took over the schooner La Amistad. After a trial that lasted 2 years, the Supreme Court granted the Mende captives their freedom. The trial generated public sympathy for the cause of abolition. Slave ship diagrams depict a systematic arrangement of captives designed to maximize profit by transporting as many people as possible. Even so, the diagrams typically show only about half the number of enslaved people on any given ship. However, the diagrams did illustrate unsanitary and cramped conditions that increased the incidence of disease, disability, and death during a trip that could last up to 90 days. Slave ship diagrams rarely included the features enslavers used to minimize resistance, such as guns, nets to prevent captives from jumping overboard, and iron instruments to force-feed those who resisted. African resistance on slave ships spurred anti-slavery activism. In the 18th and 19th centuries, black and white anti-slavery activists circulated diagrams of slave ships to raise awareness of the dehumanizing conditions of the Middle Passage. Since abolition, black visual and performance artists have repurposed the iconography of the slave ship to process historical trauma and honor the memory of their ancestors. It is estimated that more than 12.5 million Africans were forced onto 36,000 known voyages during a period of 350 years. While there are some white Americans who want black Americans to simply let go of the atrocities of the past, arguing that slavery ended so long ago that it is time for African Americans to get over slavery and move on with their lives. However, in much the same way that the Jews vowed to never forget the horrors of the Holocaust, there is value for African Americans to educate themselves and their children about the history of their people for a variety of reasons. Contemporary black artists continue to use the image of the slave ship to expose the brutality of the slave trade, to symbolize black resistance and identity, to protest racism and oppression, to memorialize their ancestors and to reassert a common identity between modern-day African Americans and the Africans of the diaspora. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please drop a like, leave a comment, and share it on social media. You can also subscribe to the channel at Quietly Radical on YouTube to be notified whenever new videos are released. Please join us next time when we'll discuss slave auctions and the domestic slave trade.